This weekend I'm making beef bone broth from scratch using a mixture of marrow bones and regular beef bones. These bones came from a steer that we had processed last year, but you can find marrow bones at the grocery store as well. I'm covering these with tomato paste and then I'm going to roast them in a 400-degree oven for about 25 or 30 minutes. This is just red wine that I didn't want to drink. I didn't like it, so I'm going to use it in my broth. Now I'm adding the bones that I've roasted to the bottom of my crock pot. I'm going to pour off all the grease that came out of these bones before I use the wine to deglaze my pan. You can save the fat to cook with. It makes an excellent gravy. And then I'm going to use the wine, deglaze my pan, and add all of that to my crock pot. Now I'm going to add about a tablespoon of peppercorns, 3 bay leaves, and about a 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar. The acid in the vinegar will help the bones release the collagen, which is what you want to make your broth really thick and gelatinous. I'm also using onion scraps instead of a whole onion. I save my onion scraps specifically to make broth. And then you want to use just enough water to cover your bones. And I'm going to put the lid on and I'm going to set this to high for an hour, and then I turn it down to low and let it cook for 8 hours or overnight. You want to keep it at a low boil, not a rapid boil. That will keep your collagen from breaking down. I had enough bones to make 2 crock pots at a time, so that's what I'm doing. When the broth is finished, I strain it through a tea towel to keep any solids out of my finished broth. Now I'm going to add those sediments, the solid pieces, back to my crock pot when I'm finished straining this, because I'm going to add water back to both of these crock pots and cook this again for another 8 hours. As you can see, the bones still have a lot of marrow left in them, and I want to get as much benefit out of that as I can. I'm going to let the broth cool completely down, and then I put it in the refrigerator to chill. I ended up cooking my bones 3 more times, and I ended up with roughly 2 gallons of finished broth. Once the broth is chilled, all the fat will rise to the top, and you want to remove as much of that as possible. At this point, I would usually freeze this because it did make a fantastic gelatinous broth, but my freezer is full, and so I'm going to can this today. And for broth, you do have to pressure can. I'm not sure if pressure canning this doesn't break down the benefits of having the gelatinous collagen in your broth, but I love having it on the shelf to use, so I'm going to go ahead and can it anyway. The headspace for broth, just like meat, is 1 inch, and 1 inch of headspace is just below that bottom ring on your jar. Anything trapped between the rim of your jar and the lid can prevent your jar from creating a good seal, so I'm wiping with vinegar to dissolve any fat that may be sitting on the rim of the jar. These jars are super hot. They're filled with boiling hot broth, so when I put the lids on, don't think I got all of them quite as tight as I should have, and that caused a problem that I'll show you later when I take the lid of my canner off. Once the canner comes up to pressure and it's releasing a steady stream of steam, I set my timer for 10 minutes and then I add my weight. Once my weight starts jiggling for quarts, I'm going to let it go for 90 minutes. Once my timer is over, turn the heat off and wait for it to come completely down from pressure on its own. And then I remove the weight and I wait another 5 minutes before I remove the lid. One of my lids jiggled off the top of the jar while it was under pressure. It's not a big deal. I'll put the lid on it, let it cool down, and put it in the refrigerator, and I'll just be sure to use it within a week or so. The rest of these came out perfect, and now I have nutrient-rich bone broth on my pantry shelf.